Hey everyone, welcome to Indie Film Grit, a podcast about indie films and indie filmmakers. I am your host, Timothy Patrick, but you can call me Tim. In this episode, I talk with indie filmmaker Adam Keleman. He's the writer, producer, and director of the new feature film called Easy Living, which not only premiered at South by Southwest, but it also had a limited theatrical release in New York. Let's get into it. And here we are with Adam Keleman. Adam, thanks for being on the podcast. How are you, man?
Hi, thanks so much, Tim, for having me. I'm great. It's great to be on here.
I'm excited to talk to you about your new film, Easy Living. It premiered at South by Southwest. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, no, I have a little bit of a relationship with South by Southwest. My first short film called Going Back premiered there in, I believe it was 2010. And when it became time for my feature, I knew that I thought it might be a good fit for the festival. So I was very fortunate they ended up accepting the film, and we premiered there in March 2017, this March. And I think it was like a really good audience because I think the film has a very kind of peculiar energy and it kind of zigzags in weird ways. And I feel like the audience in Austin really got it, you know?
Yeah, that's a great festival. I've never actually made it out there, but so you've been there a few times.
Yeah, I've been there twice. Yeah, once with my short in 2010 and then 2017 this year. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I know some people go even when they don't have a film to go, but
Yeah, no, it would be great to go. It's just kind of expensive to go there because flying into Austin, it's actually kind of expensive to fly into Austin, and then also finding a place to live. I don't have that many friends in Austin to crash at places, so
mhm.
it would definitely have to be for an event or for work.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Easy Living, it's your first feature length?
Yeah, my first feature-length film. It's 80 minutes long.
Nice.
Yeah.
Being your first feature film, um, obviously the process is longer than short films, but did anything surprise you? Something that's different as opposed to directing short films as with a feature?
Yeah, it's kind of hard because I felt like, yes, with the feature you have a lot more crew at your disposal,
Hmm.
but on because my indie film, even though we had some like decent named actors in the film, well-known people, um, it still felt like an indie film. I'm sorry, a small like a short film in a way,
Hmm.
because I was wearing so many hats still,
Right.
Um, and I had to wear like, at least 5 or 6 hats. Sometimes I had to drive the crew truck back to the parking lot, when
Mm.
we didn't have a PA to do it. And I'm one of those people that will get it done. I'll do whatever I have to do. 'Cause
Right.
I've worked in production for a long time, and so I know kind of the ins and outs of things. And if we didn't have enough money to hire an extra PA, or I even first AD'd my own movie. So
Hmm.
it's not unheard of, but I think that learning from that, next time I will hire a first AD, um,
Yeah.
just
Well, if you
because of
got the
the
budget, right?
yeah, exactly. If we had money for it in some ways, but I decided that the money could be better spent in other ways.
Hmm.
'Cause I know I work in production a lot, so I know how to AD. So, but
Hmm.
I think ultimately it did take my focus away a little bit creatively, which I would have loved to have been like just solely focused on the movie.
Yeah. Now, what made you want to make a feature? Was it the story you were telling was just too long to be a short, or did you decide after two short films you're ready to make a feature?
Yeah, I think I made 2 short films that did decently. And I realized that I wanted to kind of get my career going because it's rare these days that a short will lead you to, a lot of Hollywood attention in the sense of like being signed by an agent, getting out there in the world. I think shorts that are CGI driven or horror film driven are more likely to get that kind of attention
Mm.
because they can see like, oh, you could do big budget stuff, or you can handle CGI
Hmm.
or sci-fi. But I think when you're doing kind of small, like kind of experimental, like not experimental, but like playing with conventions, which I feel like my two shorts kind of do in kind of a quiet, observant ways. Um, you know, those. I was realizing quickly that my next step, if I wanted to get further along, is to make a feature. And it didn't, in my mind, like, I think some people kind of get hung up on like, oh, I need to make a very perfect feature film that will be my calling card and that will represent me fully for the
Hmm.
kind of work I want to do. And I think at the end of the day, you just have to go out and make something. And whether that gets a lot of attention or not, at least that will lead you to another thing.
That night when your film plays at the festival, can you tell me about that experience a little?
Yeah, it was funny because like I said, I'd been to South by Southwest before, and I kind of knew a little bit what to expect. But when I recall driving up in my taxi to the theater and kind of seeing the venue. It was at an Alamo Draft House
Mm.
where the film premiered, and I wasn't fully processing it yet. I was like, oh, I'm just like going to the Alamo Draft House, and everything's gonna be fine. But I think once I got there, and then once I saw, a line full of people waiting to come in, and we were about to take some pictures in front of the South by Southwest sign. It was like it kind of like hit me like a ton of bricks.
Hmm.
And but it was the audience. It was nice, seeing it with an audience, a massive audience for the first time. At least 200 people were there, and just hearing where people were laughing. It's almost like, it's funny with indie movies is that we aren't able to like market and test our movies as
Hmm.
widely as these big films do. So it's kind of like it's interesting to be able to share it with a big audience for the first time because you're like, oh, that's where the people are laughing, or that's where people are like really quiet and engaged, and
Hmm.
um, and
Now,
so that's
did
interesting.
yeah. Now, did that lead you to make changes before you released it on VOD? Little tweaks
No,
here and there? No.
I no, because I realized the kind of tweaks I would have made would have cost me a lot more money.
Oh,
So
right.
in the sense of like I'd love to be able to reshoot a day or do create a whole other scene, but we just didn't have the money for that.
Sure.
Um, so it's kind of like making the most. I was very proud of what we showed. I feel like because I feel like the film is a very peculiar film that people will get if they get it, and if they don't, they won't. So at the end of the day, I can't persuade anyone. You never can persuade anyone to like anything.
Hmm.
And I feel like with this film especially, like it's wave. If you're on the wavelength, if you're on the bus, you'll ride it all the way to the end. If you're not, you're not. So I figured, I'm very happy with how it's been responded to, and with, the film that I ultimately made.
Hmm.
Um, and our film, essentially, we got a direct to VOD offer from Gravitas Ventures and a few other, um, like we got about 4 or 5 offers, but I decided, you know, I decided to go to Gravitas because of the familiarity with the VOD world, and um, also they gave us enough money that we could put a week run in New York. So we did a New York run, and that got us a trade review finally, or a good review in Hollywood Reporter. And it got us finally a Rotten Tomatoes score because we got enough got about 5 reviews. It was very hard in South by to get press because South by is so expensive to go out there.
Hmm.
So not enough press go to South by. So you're fighting for press basically at South by Southwest, and most of their attention are on the bigger films, like the new Edgar Wright film Baby Driver. That was like the hot ticket, and that's where most of the press went to that film.
Well, that's
And
exciting. I mean,
yeah,
not only did you world premiere at South by Southwest, but you made enough money to have it run in the theaters in New York. That's great.
Yeah, no, it was great. We got this theater that has an amazing deal called Cinema Village, and they give you 100% of the box office back. So we'll get, a nice percentage of what we spent back at least, which is good.
So when you were working on the script for all those years, did you ever think about trying to sell it, or was it always your intention to make that film yourself?
Yeah, it was always my intention to make it myself because I knew it was, conceptually it was a bit odd, because all these moments in the film with the makeup selling are completely improvised, and I knew that this wouldn't like be an easy sell to like get a lot of money for,
Hmm.
um, and then I would tie those moments into this narrative script, um,
That's
and so.
exciting. Now, that puts a lot of pressure on your casting to find a lead that is comfortable improvising.
I know it's funny because I did not know the lead Caroline Duvernay could improvise. Everything I've seen her in has been heavily scripted, and so I just knew that she was a phenomenal actor. I was a huge fan of hers from the television show Wonder Falls, which is from the early 2000s, and then she's also the female lead in the television show Hannibal.
Hmm.
Um, and she blew me away. We shot the two improvised makeup selling days first, and the first moment I saw her in front of the camera, my like jaw dropped because I just was just elated on like the direction she was taking the character.
Hmm. And how much of the success of the film do you attribute to her?
I probably at least like 90%.
Oh, really?
you
Yeah.
know I think the film would not work at all without, she holds the film on her shoulders because the film kind of goes in so many kind of weird, crazy places. I don't think an actor, there are some actors that are like her, but I feel like she can balance. She has such a wide range, and she can balance these kind of absurd moments with these kind of really nuanced, quiet, vulnerable moments too. And she can be really funny, and she can be really dramatic too. And I think I think she's the only one that I feel strongly could have made this film happen because she just is so phenomenal in what she does.
What about the film score? Can you walk me through the process of figuring out the music?
Yeah, this was I'd worked with a composer before on one of my shorts, but it was very simple. Like we only had one piece of score. And with Easy Living, I realized in the editing process, people like when we showed it to friends, they were hungry for more score. So working with composers I met through friends, they're actually based in Los Angeles. We were able to develop the world of Easy Living and the tones and the characters and the energies of Easy Living through the music. And the music, it really propels the film, and really kind of helps solidify the tones because there's a few different tonal shifts in the movie, and I feel like the music is integral to like allowing those shifts to happen seamlessly, or at least organically. You
Hmm.
know,
Oh yeah, for sure.
it was a there it was two gentlemen, their team called Juke and Juke, and they were a really cool team to work with and very talented. And what was great with them is that they did several sound alikes for the movie, which a sound alike is when you're using a song as temp in the score when you're editing, and you are like stuck to that song, but you can't afford the rights to obtain the song. So they create a song that's similar in tone and energy to that song.
Hmm.
And they because the film is sort of a barfly movie in some ways, we had to come up with at least 4 to 5 songs to fill up the different times of the bar. You know.
Hmm.
And they were really great. I kind of want to be able to release that soundtrack someday because I love the 6 songs they created for the movie.
Yeah, I'm surprised you don't have that out as part of your deal.
Yeah.
That'd be
All
great.
right. Yeah, I don't know how the logistics going on, because certainly I can't afford to do it myself. So,
Hmm.
um, but it'd be nice somehow to like put them out there.
And according to IMDb, it's listed as a comedy drama thriller. Is that pretty much how
Yeah,
you see it?
yeah. I mean, I kind of see it as a dramedy, but that's such a funny thing to say. So,
Hmm.
I guess I would, because I feel like drama is more of a generic umbrella term for all movies in a way.
Hmm.
So I guess I would label it as a drama with comedic elements and some kind of psychological and thriller moments,
Yeah.
uh, because it's kind of a psychological character study in a lot of ways, and I think that's the best like apt description of the movie. But there are a lot of absurd and kind of camp moments in the film.
Yeah, I mean, there is, just from what I saw, even the colors lend itself to that. There's I don't want to say brightness, but there's definitely color. Was that something you were conscious about when filming?
Yeah, no, I mean, at first we kind of filmed with these like more muted colors because we wanted to kind of create a more, we kind of wanted to make our own world in a little bit of ways, but
Hmm.
also somewhat of a period piece. Like we don't really tell anybody when the film takes place, but it's kind of looks like it could be take place in the mid 90s even,
Yeah, I did see a flip phone and it threw me.
Yeah.
I was a little confused,
Yeah. And
but now it
so
makes sense.
yeah, so it's not necessarily, people say it could be now, people say it could be in the 70s. Obviously it can't be in the 70s because there's flip phones.
Hmm.
But we and there's a microwave, like a fancy microwave at some
Hmm.
point. But we tried to make our own world as best as we could, and because makeup selling door to door isn't really that much of a thing as much now. I mean, there are like people have Tupperware parties, people do have makeup selling parties, but I think door to door selling kind of stopped in like the late 90s, because of the advent of the internet.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's why we kind of tried to kind of create as much of a 90s feel as we could.
Very cool.
The film, let me just say, like, I really want to like, what I want to say about the film is that it's a film about a kind of a lost soul, and she's kind of finding her place in the world. She watches old movies at night. She kind of almost imagines herself in a movie. I think the ending is a bit crazy, so watch out for that. But some people who really love this character find her just so like kind of captivating in her kind of constant meandering in a way, just like saying one thing and doing something else, or kind of contradicting herself left and right and zigzagging through this world. And I think that's the character I ultimately wanted to create, was this woman who was kind of teetering in life and but yet wanted to kind of find home, in a way, or find her place. And I just want to like allow people to kind of be enveloped in the movie, and allow the character to take over, because I think you won't get much out of it if you're just questioning her motives left and right, because I think that is the character. I just want to tell you that.
Yeah. No, it
um,
sounds
she
like a real character study.
she is a mercurial being, so you can't pin this one down no matter how you try.
Hmm. So, 5 years to write this one. Is it going to be 5 years till you make another? Or what's your plan for making films in the future?
Well, I will never take 5 years again to make a project. Right now, I'm writing two television show pilots, because making an independent film takes so much out of you that making another, unless someone handed me like $10 million to make like a high budget indie movie, I think ultimately I'm in it for the long game, and I want to have a career, and I want to be able to like sustain my life through my work.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, you've worked
and
so much in production that you're obviously comfortable within the machine.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know what every cog, what every role in the machine is, what in the production is. And so now I'm curious more on the creative side, working with other writers or working with other producers. I would love to do that, and I'm hoping one of these things that I'm writing now, or at least be and pique the interest of the industry once I put them out there in the world. Hopefully in the next few months when they're finished.
Nice. Well, best of luck with that.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Your films have been to South by twice. There are cats out there that haven't even gotten one in yet. Since you do have a little bit of a connection there and you see what happens, how it works, can you give any advice to someone trying to get into a festival like that?
One, obviously you have to make something. But two, I would just put yourself out there. I would go to any sort of filmmaker meetup group, mixer, mingle. If you're not connected to a film community, I would put yourself out there. It's all about word of mouth. It's all about like a filmmaker being like, oh, my friends, recommending a film to a programmer. Everyone's kind of interconnected. It's like a massive web. Mm-hmm. So you have to get yourself out there. You have to connect with people. It's like, programmers are approachable. You can talk to them about your movie. They want to know. They want to see what the next thing is. Obviously, there's we're at a place in time where there's so much content that the odds are against you. It's just the reality of it. But if you have to be proactive. It's almost like you have to kind of like eat, live, dream it. Mm-hmm. You have to make a goal for yourself and sort of scheme a way to meet that goal. It's it's not necessarily being ruthless. It's about like forming relationships and connections with people that you'll want to work with that will help you out ultimately.
Mm-hmm. I mean, some would call it the law of attraction. Some would call it physics. But you got to think about it. It's got to be on your mind or it'll never happen.
Yeah. And also, it has to do with the work. I think you can go out and make a short. It could either be good, bad, or whatever, different, or could disappear, or whatever. But just make something that only you can make. You want to be able to stand out. You want to have a unique statement, and the only way you're going to stand out is by kind of taking a risk, being bold. Take whatever crazy idea that you think you can pull off and just do it. Just use whatever resources you have at your disposal to make a movie, be it locations, actors, wardrobe, whatever crazy. Your friend has a gas station. Your mom has a connection to a farm. Integrate those elements into your movie.
Mm-hmm.
Every force in the world is against you making a movie, but you have to really kind of stretch your whole being to make it.
And it is possible. You proved that with Easy Living.
Yeah.
All right, Adam. Well, thanks. This was a great podcast. I appreciate you coming on and sharing all your knowledge about film production.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Well, that's that. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Indie Film Grit podcast. Feel free to check out the show notes at our website, indiefilmgrit.com. Follow us on Twitter at indiefilmgrit. And don't forget, subscribe to us on iTunes. Well, I should really wrap this up, but before I go, let me ask you something. Do you have the courage, the passion, and the perseverance to make indie films? Do you have enough indie film grit?